Cell is the basic and tiniest organization of the human body. There are three main parts of the cell: the exterior membrane, the interior nucleus, and cytoplasm in between. The cell membrane keeps the unity and boundary of the cell and is responsible for the exchange of substances and energy in and out of the cell. There are two major ways that molecules can be moved across the cell membrane. The distinction is whether the cell energy is used or not. Passive transport like diffusion uses no energy, while active transport needs energy to be done. The cell nucleus dominates the structure and function of the cell because it contains genetic material, chromosomes, and DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. The cytoplasm is the gel-like liquid filled in the cell. There are hundreds and thousands of tiny structures called organelles, of which the most important one is mitochondria because it provides the energy for the cell. The energy for the cell is primarily the ATP, adenosine triphosphate. The structure and function of the cell interfere with each other, such as the brush-shaped microvilli of the epithelial cell in the small intestines is to expand the contacting area for the absorption of the nutrients. Tissue is the mass of cells or germ layers with four basic types: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. The epithelial tissue has many kinds, such as simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, pseudostratified columnar, and transitional. The transitional epithelial tissue is mostly found in the inner layer of the urinary bladder, which plays the function to protect the body from urine. There are three main functions of the epithelial tissue as protection, secretion, and absorption. For example, the epidermis of the skin is composed of 4 to 5 layers of the epithelial tissue to protect our skin from invasion of pathogens. Secretion is another function of the epithelial tissue which forms glands, the structure to secrete visible liquid out of blood or invisible hormone into blood. The third function of the epithelial tissue is to absorb the substance. The small, finger-like projections called villi in the small intestines, especially jejunum, is responsible for the absorption of the nutrient during diet digestion. The three functions of the epithelial tissue can perform together as the pseudostratified ciliate columnar epithelium in the respiratory tract. It has the function to absorb water, secrete the mucus, and swing the cilia to clean and protect the trachea. The connective tissue has the most abundant and diverse forms in the 4 types of tissue with 2 functions: connection and separation. The connective tissue connects the diverse types of tissue and separates them as the borderline simultaneously. In massage therapy manipulation, the connective tissue such as fascia is mostly involved together with muscle tissue because fascia is the connective tissue connecting and separating skeletal muscle tissue. Tendon is the connective connecting muscle to bone with endomysium wrapping muscle fiber, perimysium wrapping bundle of muscle fibers, and epimysium wrapping the entire muscle. Ligament is another form of fibrous connective tissue connecting bone to bone, that is the structure of the joint. Unlike the flexibility and elasticity of tendon, ligament is firm with straight fibers for consolidating the joint and restricting the movement. In the MBLX test, ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, in the knee joint is mostly mentioned because this ligament is easily broken in athletes who play football and skate when the movement of knee joint stops abruptly and repeatedly. The injury of the tendon is described as strain with T for tendon, while sprain is for ligament injury. Fascia is one of the most important connective tissues in the massage therapy study and practice and the test as well. It connects and separates the muscle tissue. If the fascia has stiffness and stickiness, the aching pain occurs. Therefore, the myofascial release and fascia gun are so popular. Fascia is also the important boundary for the depth of muscle allocation. For example, the thoracolumbar fascia separates the lower back muscles into 3 layers from the superficial to the deep. Serous membrane is a double-layer connective tissue with one layer connecting the internal organ, visceral, and another layer connecting the skeleton, parietal. There are 3 forms of serous membrane: the pericardium connecting and separating the heart. The pleural membrane for the lung bone tissue is the hardest connective tissue in the human body, especially the teeth. It connects and separates the exterior periosteum and interior bone marrow. In the microscope, the bone tissue is the crossover branch-like structure with osteoblast cells and osteoclast ones covering outside. The half-liquid connective tissue called bone marrow filled in the gaps of the bone tissue. The red bone marrow is primarily located in the spongy bone tissue and produces hematopoietic stem cells which turn into red blood cells, erythrocytes, white blood cells, leukocytes, platelets, thrombocytes, and lymphocytes subsequently. The yellow bone marrow is composed of fat tissue in the bone cavity to provide energy when the body is exhausted. Blood is the most important connective tissue in the body. It is responsible for the body gas exchange and nutrient absorption with the outer world. Blood is made mostly of plasma, the liquid to transport blood cells within it. The red blood cells bind and carry oxygen molecules by hemoglobin, which has an iron element and appears red. The white blood cells ward off infection. The platelets help blood to clot to stop bleeding when the vein or artery is broken. There are other forms of the connective tissues such as cartilage and adipose tissue. The cartilage has three forms. Hyaline cartilage forms the inner surface of the joints to reduce friction and absorb shock during movement. Fibrocartilage has dense collagen to form intervertebral discs. Elastic cartilage forms the epiglottis to external ears for keeping shape with elasticity. Adipose tissue is commonly called fat tissue and distributes all over the body. The adipose tissue located under the skin is subcutaneous fat. The one which wraps the internal organs and fills the abdominal cavity is visceral fat. The yellow bone marrow is also the adipose. Tissue turned from red bone marrow when the body is aged.